AITA for snapping at my wife after she said I wasn't real family. I smiled and left. The next morning, my stepdaughter needed me. I always thought I was a patient man, not a saint, not a noble, just a man who stayed present. I was not born with a halo above my head, and I did not marry my wife hoping to become anyone's savior. I was simply a middle-aged man who had spent most of his life working, saving, and keeping things in order. I ran a property management company that I had built from scratch. By the time I met Laura, my current wife, I already owned 3 rental houses, 2 condominiums, and a brownstone in Brooklyn. She was beautiful, confident, twice divorced, and had a teenage daughter who carried a resentment larger than any of the buildings I managed. Her name was Nicole, and from the day I met her, I felt her evaluating me, wondering if I was just a temporary presence or someone she would have to tolerate long-term. I did not push her. I did not try to be her father. I was simply there. I paid the bills. I went to her soccer games. I helped her with her college applications when she asked me to. I even paid for her Invisalign treatment after she cried in the car because she had been called brace face too many times. But none of that mattered. I was always just Laura's husband. It was a Thursday afternoon when I asked. The house was quiet. Laura was reading on the couch, and I was sorting a pile of mail on the kitchen island. I asked casually, "So, when is Nicole's graduation? I want to make sure I clear my schedule." I was not expecting a thank you or even an acknowledgement, just basic logistical information. But she did not even look up from her book. She said it as if she were reciting a rehearsed line. It was last Saturday. At first, I thought I had misheard. I looked up from the envelope I was opening. I blinked. Wait, what? She finally looked at me and repeated it, this time more slowly with barely a slight trace of guilt in her eyes. It already happened. Don't worry. Only real family members were invited. That sentence, that exact sentence, did not just land. It tore something out from inside me. I remember the sound of the clock above the stove. I remember the way the light illuminated one side of her face like a spotlight on the betrayal. But more than anything, I remember the way I smiled. Just a small, polite smile like the one you give to a stranger who bumps into you at the supermarket. I nodded, left the mail, and walked out the back door. It is strange what your mind does when it is hurt. Mine did not explode with fury. It did not scream. I did not even feel devastated in the moment. What I felt was clarity, as if someone had finally turned on the lights in a room where I had been sitting for years. I walked around the block twice. The air was heavy with that early summer heat, and I could still smell the neighbor's barbecue. My hands were shaking, but I did not feel anything. Not yet. I just kept hearing how she had said it. Real family. As if I had not been the one who co-signed her student loan when her father disappeared. As if I had not been the one who drove 4 hours to pick her up from college after she got into a massive fight with her roommate and refused to take the bus. Real family. What the heck does that mean? Is it blood, genetics? Because if that is it, then let her go ask the man who shares her DNA, because he never even sent her a birthday card. I did not sleep that night. Laura came into the bedroom as if nothing had happened. She did not apologize. She did not explain. She simply lay down next to me and scrolled through her phone until she fell asleep. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying the last 12 years like a movie I did not even remember agreeing to star in. I remembered every dinner I had paid for, every vacation I had funded, every time I had played the voice of reason when she and her daughter were at war. I remembered watching Nicole receive her acceptance letter to Columbia, how she had screamed and jumped into my arms, even if she later swore she did not remember it. I remembered the time she was upset and crying on our porch after her first breakup, and how I had stayed with her until she fell asleep. But more than anything, I remembered that I was never invited to the graduation, that they had had a family celebration without me. The next morning, I was having coffee on the porch when I heard the front door open. Nicole, dressed like she had just stepped off a runway. Oversized sunglasses, purse, tight jeans that looked too expensive for someone on an entry-level salary. "Hi," she said as if nothing was wrong, as if the night before we had not crossed the final line. "Can we talk?" I said nothing. I just sipped my coffee and waited. She sat across from me, pulled out her phone, and cut straight to the chase. "So, I am going to move in with Justin, but we need a place to stay while the lease starts. Can you give me the keys to the New York house?" I did not look at her right away. I let the silence stretch out until it became as heavy as gravity. Then I looked her straight in the eyes and told her, That house is for real family members." The silence that followed was nuclear. Her mouth fell open slightly, as if she could not believe I had the audacity to throw her words back at her. "Are you serious?" she said, raising her voice. "Are you really going to be petty about this?" I did not move. "Being petty is excluding your stepfather from your graduation after he paid for half your life?" I said. "This is boundaries." Her face twisted into something bitter, lips tight, eyes narrowed, as if I were the villain in her origin story. "You are the most selfish person I have ever known," she spat. "You are a bitter old man." Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. And that was only the beginning. She did not text me that day or the next, and that was perfectly fine with me. I needed the silence. I needed the absence of her voice, her attitude, her sense of entitlement, because I was not angry, I was surgical. You have to understand something about people like me. When we finally decide to stop caring, we do not throw a tantrum. We simply remove the scaffolding you were standing on and walk away while you fall. And that morning, when she tried to get the keys like they were hand-me-down clothes, I saw her clearly for the first time in years. Not as the girl who had suffered, not as someone I had come to care for, just as a user, someone who had drained me emotionally, financially, and psychologically, all while treating me like a footnote. And the worst part was that my wife had allowed it. Laura had not just ignored it, she had endorsed it. So no, I did not lose sleep over those tears. I did not doubt my words. What I felt more than anything was relief. I had finally said something real, and it felt like taking off shoes that were 2 sizes too small. 2 days after that door slam, Laura confronted me in the kitchen. I was browning garlic for a pasta dish, something I always did on Sundays. She walked in with her passive-aggressive armor on, arms crossed, voice too calm, as if trying to defuse a bomb she did not know she had built. "Nicole is devastated," she said. "You did not need to say that to her." I stirred the pan once, slowly, and replied without turning around. "You mean that real family thing?" The same phrase you used with me." She exhaled sharply, as if she expected me to forget it, as if I should treat her betrayal like an offhand comment. She was upset. It was a poor choice of words. I finally faced her. "No, it was honest. You said what you meant." "So did I." Her face crumbled into that expression she used when she realized I was not playing the role she had assigned me. "Are you punishing her?" "No," I said. "I am removing myself from the equation. There is a difference." She left after that, with no plate of pasta, no olive branch, just the sound of her heels on the hardwood and the bedroom door closing. And I stood there watching the garlic turn golden in the pan, realizing how long I had been cooking for people who never thanked me. Nicole often ate with her phone in her hand, without ever looking at me. Laura only complimented my cooking when we had guests over. Never when it was just the 3 of us. I fed them, I housed them, I protected them. But when it came time to honor me, I was not even worthy of an invitation, and somehow I was assumed to be the one overreacting. The real breaking point came that Friday. I got a call from a friend of mine, Scott, who ran the human resources department at the design firm where Nicole had just landed a junior marketing job. It had taken me 2 months of networking and calling in favors to get her that interview. I never told her how many strings I had pulled. "Listen," he said cautiously, "I did not want to get involved, but she is already causing problems. It has been 2 weeks, and she has already missed 3 deadlines and talked back to a senior director. I thought you should know." I sat down at my desk. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. "You do not owe her anything," I said. "Neither do I." Scott hesitated. "Do you want me to let her go?" There was a long pause. "No," I finally replied. "Not yet. Just do not protect her when the consequences arrive." He understood. And that is the thing. Everyone who truly knew me knew I was not vindictive, but they also knew I kept the receipts. And when the time came, I cashed them in like debts. Later that afternoon, I went to the New York house, to the brownstone she thought she could waltz into like a princess returning to her castle. I changed the locks. I revoked her access to the smart home system. I gathered her things, the few items she had left there, packed them up, and stored them in the basement. I did not throw them away. I did not destroy them. I was not cruel. I was simply done. I also called my lawyer and quietly removed her name from my will. She had never been officially adopted, so there was not even a dispute. I had included her out of sentimentality years earlier. That sentimentality had expired. I also checked my financial accounts. She was listed as a beneficiary on some. Everything was wiped clean. Laura still appeared on a few, but even that felt temporary in my mind, because when someone shows you what you mean to them, I believe them. And when someone tells you that you are not really family, it would be foolish to leave them in the will. The next bomb dropped a week later. Nicole showed up again, this time with Justin, the boyfriend. He was a tall, thin guy with paint on his jeans, and that vague look of someone who knows how to be charming when it suits him. He stood behind her while she pounded on my door like she had a right to be there. "You can't be serious," she screamed as soon as I opened the door, telling Justin that I was unstable. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "No. I told him to ask you who really paid for your tuition. I told him to ask you what kind of person excludes someone from their graduation after he paid their rent for 2 years. Justin shifted, uncomfortable. "Look, I did not know there was this much history." "That is exactly it," I said. "You never know. You only know the version of her that benefits you." Nicole took a step forward, her voice shrill. "You are trying to ruin my life." I raised an eyebrow. "No, Nicole, I am simply refusing to protect the version of your life that was built on my silence any longer." Laura arrived 10 minutes later, frantic, trying to play the mediator. She asked to speak to me in private, and I agreed. We sat in the dining room while Nicole and Justin grumbled outside. She spoke in that voice people use when they have already lost and are just trying to save face. "We do not have to escalate this. She is still young." I looked her in the eyes. "She is 24. Old enough to choose who matters, old enough to know what words do. She chose to treat me like a stranger. Now she is experiencing what that means." Laura tried to take my hand. "Please, this is not you." I pulled away. "It has always been me. You just did not see it because I was too busy trying to be something for your daughter. Now, I am simply being me for myself." That evening, I poured myself a scotch and sat on the balcony. The city sounded the comforting way it always does. Honest, relentless, unapologetic. I watched the skyline glow and thought about everything I had given and how little had ever been acknowledged. And I made myself a promise. No more apologizing, no more fixing, no more being the doormat in a house I paid for. They could call me the villain. They could cry, scream, and twist the narrative. It did not matter to me anymore. I was done being their emotional wallet. The keys were not the only thing she had lost that day. She had lost her safety net. They always say that people show you who they are when the pressure is on. I used to believe that meant when things get tough. Illness, job loss, a death in the family. But that is not exactly it. No. What really brings out the truth is when the person who has always held up the roof finally puts their arms down and says, "Figure it out yourselves." I had been that guy for 12 years, hoisting the beams, patching the leaks, paying for extras no one asked for, but everyone expected. But now, I had stepped aside, and suddenly the cracks were not just visible. They were flooding the whole house. Nicole could not keep a job. She could not maintain a stable relationship without a storyline that spun everything to her advantage. Laura could not hold a conversation without circling back to the theme of how I had changed or grown cold. But the truth was I had not changed. I had just stopped pretending. It all started with a call. I was in my office overlooking the Hudson when Scott called again. "Listen," he said, "I gave her a lot of leeway because of you, but she is toxic." She rolled her eyes at a partner in a meeting yesterday and said she does not understand the digital strategy because he is over 40. I did not laugh. I did not even sigh. "You know what you have to do," I said. He hesitated. "Are you sure, Scott?" I replied calmly. "If I were anyone else, you would have fired her already. Do not keep her because of me. She made her choices. Let her live with them." An hour later, he texted me. Done. No anger, no guilt, just the sound of another crutch being pulled out from under someone who thought they were standing on solid ground. And I felt nothing, neither relief nor remorse, only a quiet sense of inevitability. She had been wobbling for a long time. I had simply stopped breaking her fall. That afternoon, Laura came home from work with that look on her face that meant a storm was about to break behind her eyes. I was pouring myself a glass of red wine when she dropped her purse on the counter. She got fired. No hello, no preamble, just guilt wrapped up in a sentence. "I know," I said. "Scott called me." She looked at me, narrowing her eyes as if I were a stranger. "You knew and you did not stop it." I took a sip, savoring the dryness. She was rude, disrespectful, and unprofessional. She did not get fired because of me. She got fired because of her. Laura's voice cracked like a whip. You made her look like an idiot in front of him. I set the glass down slowly. He is a 48-year-old executive, Laura. He does not need me to tell him when someone is a liability. It looked like she wanted to slap me. You are destroying her future because your ego is bruised. I raised an eyebrow. No. I am simply refusing to protect someone who made it perfectly clear that I did not belong in the family. She stormed out of the kitchen, muttering under her breath. I did not follow her. In the past, I would have chased after her, begged for understanding, tried to be the bridge between her and her daughter. I will no longer burn the bridge only to watch them try to cross the ashes as if nothing had changed. And when I say I do not care, I do not say it with bitterness. I say it with peace. I had already mourned this family. This was not grief, it was a rebirth. That evening, I drafted emails to my financial advisor. I moved accounts, changed property titles. Everything that was in both our names was reassigned. Laura would still get what was legally hers. But Nicole gets nothing, not a dime. I was not cutting her off out of spite. I was simply closing a chapter. She had made it clear that I was never really family. Well, real family does not get access to my empire. Real family does not pretend I am invisible while expecting me to be their safety net. Then came the voicemail. I did not even know I had a missed call until I checked my phone the next morning. It was from Nicole. She had left the message around midnight. Her voice sounded slurred and angry. You think you can ruin my life and act like it is justified? You are a bitter, lonely man. You always have been. You think just because you paid for things, it made you important? No. It made you pathetic. You forced yourself in, and now you are mad because nobody wanted you there. You are not family. You were a band-aid, and now you are nothing. I listened to that message 3 times, not because it hurt. No, I already knew she thought that, but because there was something liberating about hearing it out loud. She had always been polite to my face when she needed something. But this voicemail, this was her truth, and it gave me permission. Permission to stop pretending she had ever loved me like a father or respected me as a man. That weekend, I ran into someone unexpected. It was Emily, my niece on my late sister's side, someone I had not seen in almost 5 years. We crossed paths in a bookstore in Brooklyn. She hugged me tightly and pulled back to get a better look at me. You look lighter, she said. I laughed. Divorce does that. She tilted her head. Wait, you guys are separated? Not legally, I said, but emotionally. I am on my own now. We grabbed a coffee, and between lattes, I told her everything. She was the first person I had opened up to in months. When I finished, she leaned back and said, Honestly, I am glad she used you. You deserved better. This validation penetrated deeper than I expected because a part of me still wondered if I had gone too far. If by tearing everything away, I had become cold. But hearing someone see it clearly, see me clearly, brought me peace. I was not crazy. I was not cruel. I was simply done. The next day, Nicole came back. This time alone, no Justin, no Laura. Her face was puffy, her eyes red. I opened the door, but I did not invite her in. What do you want? I asked. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret, but her mouth twisted. You are ruining my life, she said in a low, trembling voice. I cannot find another job. Justin and I fight all the time because of what you said. I nodded slowly. Sounds tough. She scoffed. Do you like seeing me suffer? I shook my head. No, Nicole, I do not like it, but I am not going to lose sleep over it either. Actions have consequences. Her voice broke. I just needed help, that is all. You had help, I told her, for 12 years. But instead of gratitude, you gave me disrespect. Instead of love, you gave me silence. And now you want access without the relationship. I am not an ATM. I am not your backup plan. I am not your father. She did not answer. She just looked at me with her fiery eyes. Tears threatened to fall, but pride held them inside. She turned and walked away. Her shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world had finally become real to her. I watched her leave, and for the first time in over a decade, I did not feel guilty. I felt free, not because I had hurt her, but because I had stopped betraying myself to make her comfortable. Finally, I had chosen myself. I was not planning on going to the party. It was the birthday of a friend, someone I had known for a long time, A guy named Gary who had lived in the same apartment complex as me in my 20s, when we were both working temp jobs and barely surviving. We had stayed in touch over the years, mostly with occasional poker games and shared barbecues. He was not part of the family drama. He did not know the details. And maybe that is what drew me there in the first place. A space where I could breathe, where no one looked at me like a monster or a traitor or a walking ATM that had finally shut down. So, I went. I brought a bottle of wine. I put on a clean, ironed shirt. I smiled when people asked how the business was doing. I played my part, the one I played before getting tangled up in someone else's idea of a family. I was standing near the grill in the backyard with Gary when I heard her voice. I recognized it even before I turned around. That high-pitched, slightly nasal tone that always grew more dramatic when she was trying to make a point. Nicole, and of course, Laura, were with her. They walked in as if they owned the place, fake smiles and pointy heels, hugging people they barely remembered from years ago. I saw Gary notice the shift in my posture. How my smile tightened, how I subtly turned my body. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I lied. "I just was not expecting family." But they saw me. Nicole's eyes locked onto mine like a target, and before I could walk away, she was coming right toward me, dragging her fury behind her like a designer bag. "Happy now?" she muttered as soon as she was close enough for the others to hear. "You ruined everything. My job, my relationship, my reputation. Do you think that makes you powerful?" I did not react. I did not flinch. I just took a slow sip of my drink and said, "Those things, you ruined yourself." I simply stopped covering up the mess. But she was not there to have a discussion. She was there to put on a show. She turned to the small group that was starting to surround us, uninvited but undeniably drawn to the drama. "He is not who he pretends to be," she said to no one in particular. "This man is vindictive. He is cold. He cut me off completely, without warning. He threw me away like I was garbage. After years of calling him his father." Those words hurt, not because they were true, but because of the ease with which she weaponized the story. She had never called me dad. Not once, not even when I paid for her braces, not even when I took her to her graduation dress fitting when her mother had a work emergency. Even then, I was just Jason, a background character. But now, in front of strangers, she wanted to rewrite the script, paint me as the villain. Laura stepped in, trying to play mediator, but it only made things worse. "Jason, please," she said with a strained smile. "Let us not do this here." I looked her right in the face and replied calmly, "You are the one who brought her here." The group fell silent. Eyes gleamed with interest as if we were a live reality show. Nicole looked like she was about to cry, but her pride turned the tears into fury. "You are a bitter old man," she spat. "You will die alone and no one will care." For a moment, I did not say anything. I just stood there letting the words hang in the air like smoke. Then I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe, but I will die knowing I did not spend my life being used." The silence that followed was suffocating. Laura grabbed Nicole by the arm and pulled her away, muttering something through her teeth. People started to scatter. Conversations resumed in awkward whispers. Gary walked over to me. He handed me another drink. "That was something," he said. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Yes, actually, I am fine." The fallout was not just public. It spread like wildfire through family gossip. Cousins I had not spoken to in years started texting me. Some to support me, others to reprimand me for being insensitive. I did not answer most of them, but I called my brother Eric, who had always seen through Laura and Nicole's game. He listened in silence as I told him about the party, the confrontation. "You did the right thing," he said when I finished. "They ate off your plate for years and acted like you should be grateful." I laughed bitterly. "Well, now she is starving." He paused. "Better they learn to cook for themselves." But not everyone agreed. A few days later, I got a text message from Justin, the boyfriend. "Hey, can we talk?" I agreed to meet him at a diner, mostly out of curiosity. When I arrived, he was already there. He was playing with his coffee cup. He looked tired, guilty. He did not waste time on small talk. "She told me you lied, that you manipulated me into doubting her." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Did I?" He hesitated. "I do not know. That is the problem. I do not know what is true anymore. One day she says you never cared about her. The next day she cries saying you were the only father figure she ever had." I leaned back in the booth. I crossed my arms. She had 12 years to tell me that to my face. She did not. He nodded slowly. I guess I just wanted to hear your side. I looked at him for a long time. You do not have to choose sides, Justin. Just look at the patterns. That will tell you everything. We did not talk much more. He left looking torn, like a man caught between two collapsing buildings. I did not envy him, but I did not pity him either. We all have to learn eventually. And sometimes the lesson is this. When you build your life on manipulation and entitlement, you should not be surprised when the foundation sinks. I had been the foundation. Now, I was gone, and they were feeling the tremors. That evening, Laura sent a text. Only 4 words. Can we talk soon? I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of emotion, but calculation. What did she want? Reconciliation, closure, damage control, whatever it was. I was not in the mood. I simply replied, not now. I turned off my phone, poured myself a drink, and sat on the balcony, letting the silence embrace me like never before. I did not hear from Nicole for almost 3 weeks after the party. No texts, no calls, not even secondhand guilt passed along by Laura. And honestly, it was a blessing. For the first time in over a decade, my days felt like my own. I worked, I cooked for one, I read in silence, and I walked around my own house without feeling like I was intruding on someone else's emotional crisis. The walls were quieter. The furniture stayed where I put it. The air was not thick with unspoken tension or sideways glances. It is amazing how peace arrives, not like a parade. It simply settles in slowly, replacing the chaos one breath at a time, and I was breathing again. For the first time in years, I did not feel like I had to prove my place in my own home. But peace never lasts when others still believe they have a right to your energy. The first sign of Nicole's breakdown did not come directly from her. It came from Justin. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon, and I almost did not answer. Seeing his name flash on my screen felt like a test I had never signed up for, but curiosity won. Hi, he said in a low, tired voice. Do you have a minute? I stepped out onto the balcony, away from the hum of emails and appointments. Go ahead. There was a pause on his end, as if he were trying to decide how much truth to reveal. We are not doing well, he finally said. She has been different since everything happened. I do not know how to talk to her. I said nothing. I let him squirm a bit in the silence. She brings you up all the time, he continued. She either blames you, or she says she wishes you would forgive her so everything could go back to normal. But there is no more normal. No, really, that sentence stuck with me. There is no more normal, because it was the most honest thing anyone in this triangle had said since the beginning. Nicole was addicted to the idea of stability, to a version of reality where I kept paying the emotional and financial bills even after she had burned every bridge between us. She wanted the resources without the relationship, the trust fund without the trust. But life does not work that way. Love does not work that way, and I was not going to pretend anymore. You are starting to understand now, I told Justin, the difference between love and exploitation. She used me, and now she is trying to use your empathy. He did not argue, he just sighed. Yeah, I think I am starting to see it. The next time I saw Laura, she looked like someone who had not slept. Her makeup was carefully applied, but the exhaustion showed in the way her shoulders slumped, in the small lines around her mouth that she used to hide with lip gloss and charm. She invited me to dinner at the house she technically still co-owned, though it would not be for much longer. I accepted not because I wanted a reconciliation, but because closure is a luxury that some people need spelled out in person. I arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. The dining room looked the same as always, except for the tension in the air that made the flowers in the vase seem like props rather than decoration. She had cooked salmon, my favorite dish, and I almost laughed at the subtle manipulation. Food had always been her olive branch. When things went wrong, she fed me instead of apologizing, hoping the taste would erase the memory. It used to work. Not anymore. We sat across from each other like two people negotiating the end of a ceasefire. And for the first 5 minutes, we did not talk about anything real, just the weather, mutual acquaintances, what book I was reading. But eventually, she folded her napkin and looked me straight in the eyes. I miss what we had, she said quietly. The version of us that did not have all this weight. I put down my fork. I wiped my mouth with the napkin she had folded to perfection. You mean the version where I stayed silent while your daughter treated me like a stranger? She flinched. That is not fair. I did not reply. No, it is not. But it is true. She looked like she wanted to cry, but her pride would not let her. "I did not know it would hurt you so deeply," she whispered. "She was my daughter. I was trying to be there for her." "And who was there for me?" I asked. "Who protected me when I was excluded from a graduation I helped pay for? Who defended me when she called me a substitute to my face? You did not just allow her to hurt me, Laura. You helped her." She shook her head. "I never wanted to." "But you did," I said. "And not wanting to hurt does not erase the damage. It just makes you feel better while delivering it." The silence after that was louder than anything we had said all evening. I could see it on her face. That slow, growing realization that the gap between us was not something a couple's therapy session could fix. She wanted to rewind time. I had already thrown out the tape. "So what do we do now?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I leaned back, taking a sip of water. "Now, we talk to the lawyer, we divide the assets. You get what is fair. I am not out for blood, but I am also not going to stay in a marriage where I am invisible." She nodded slowly, tears finally rolling down her cheeks. "I never thought it would come to this." I stood up and said softly but firmly, "You never thought I would leave. That was the mistake." I left before dessert. The street was quiet and the wind had picked up, rustling the leaves in that way that always makes it feel like there is a change in the air. I did not feel angry, just complete, as if a story I had stayed in for too long was finally coming to an end. And I was not going to apologize for turning the last page. On the drive home, I thought about all the times I had twisted myself to fit their expectations, all the times I had allowed myself to be reduced to a bank account with a silent smile, and I realized something important. I had been trying to earn the love of people who did not know how to give it. Not real love, not the kind that shows up even when you are uncomfortable or imperfect. I had been pretending. They had been spectators, and now the show was over. The first morning I woke up alone in the New York house. The silence was there in a way that did not feel empty. It felt earned. The sun filtered through the linen curtains, just right. And I lay there for a full 15 minutes without moving, listening to nothing but the distant hum of the city through the glass. For the first time in over a decade, there was no one expecting anything from me. No demands, no passive-aggressive sighs at breakfast, no questions disguised as orders, just stillness. That kind of peace does not arrive with trumpets. It walks in like an old friend you have not seen in years. It sits down and says, "Are you ready to start living for yourself now?" And I truly was. Finally, I was. I had sold the other house, the one I shared with Laura. We finalized the separation a month after that dinner. The scene where she finally stopped pretending she did not know what she had done. The legal part was simple. We had always kept separate accounts for the most part, and I left her what she brought in. I kept the New York house, a few investments, and a retirement fund that no longer needed to cover anyone but me. We did not fight over anything. I think deep down, she knew that dragging things out would only expose more truths she was not ready to sit with. When I walked out of that last meeting with the lawyer, I did not feel triumphant. I felt clean, as if I had stepped out of a role that had grown tight and suffocating. I was no longer angry. That part had burned out. What remained was something sharper. Sharp but still soft. It was freedom with edges. Nicole tried one more time. She sent a handwritten letter, no less. It arrived one afternoon while I was taking a walk in the West Village, and I did not open it right away. I left it on the counter for 3 days. I would look at it sometimes while I sipped my morning coffee or waited for my soup to heat up on the stove. But I did not touch it. I think a part of me was afraid. Afraid that she had finally figured out how to say what needed to be said. Afraid she would apologize in a way that would make me wonder if I had given up too soon. But more than anything, I was afraid she would almost apologize, that she would do just enough to awaken guilt without ever taking real accountability. That was what hurt the most about people like her. Not their cruelty, but their ability to weaponize just enough remorse to keep you chained. When I finally opened the letter, it was exactly what I expected. Not exactly an apology, more like a carefully crafted PR statement. "I know things blew up. I did not mean to leave you out. I was just overwhelmed. You did a lot for me, and I never thank you properly. I miss how things were before. I hope you can find a way to let go of the anger." No mention of what she had said, no accountability, just enough sentimentality to look good on paper. I folded it once, then again, and tossed it into the fireplace. Not with rage, not with a grand symbolic gesture, just because some things do not deserve to be archived. Letting go is not always about forgiveness. It is about refusing to keep the evidence around for another argument. People ask if I regret anything, if I regret stepping away, speaking up, drawing a line. But the truth is, regret does not live here anymore. Regret left with the woman who told me I was not real family. It packed its bags when I changed the locks. It signed the divorce papers and waved from the rearview mirror. No. What lives here now is clarity. What lives here is space. What lives here is the understanding that love, real love, does not ask you to disappear. It does not force you to prove yourself every day while withholding affection as if it were a prize. Love is not a ledger. It is not a weapon, and it is definitely not conditional. I walk more now. I cook for myself. I read entire books in one sitting without someone interrupting to ask if I paid the phone bill or remind me to take out the trash. I take day trips. I sit in quiet cafes without anyone expecting me to be home by a certain hour. I laugh more, even if it is at silly jokes and crossword puzzles. And every now and then, I think about the life I left behind, not with nostalgia, just with curiosity, like a museum exhibit I once knew well, but now walk past with only a faint recognition. Somewhere, Laura is probably trying to pick up the pieces. Nicole is probably telling someone else how she was victimized by a stepfather who expected too much emotional return on his investment. Maybe she paints me as bitter, cold, unforgiving. It is fine if she does. I am not interested in rewriting her version of me. I am not here to correct her narrative. My peace does not require her understanding. It only requires my truth. And my truth is this. I gave what I had to people who did not know how to receive it. I stood in the fire for people who would not even hold an umbrella for me. I built security for people who left me out in the cold. And when I stopped, when I finally said enough, they did not fall apart because I ruined them. They fell apart because I stopped holding them together. That is not cruelty, it is reality. It is what happens when a person you treated like a backup plan finally stops showing up. The best thing I ever did for myself was to stop begging to be seen by people who preferred to keep me invisible. The best thing I did was walk away, not with vengeance, but with clarity. And the best part is, I did not lose anything. They did. They lost someone who would have stood by them through anything, if only they had treated me like I mattered. Comment. This story really stayed with me. I've learned that setting healthy boundaries is one of the most important acts of self-respect you can practice. You don't have to keep giving when your kindness is constantly taken for granted. It's okay to choose your peace, even if others don't understand it. Real healing often begins the moment you stop betraying your own heart to keep others comfortable. You deserve relationships where your efforts are seen and valued. Taking responsibility for your own well-being is not selfish, it's necessary. I hope this encourages you to reflect on the relationships in your life. Learning to put yourself first can feel scary at first, but it brings a kind of freedom that's worth it. Your peace and self-respect matter more than you know. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.